we get on the Zoom calls to do workouts, as every other team in the world started doing, and the daycare get closed, so the child was running about, climbing over me whenever I'm trying to do push-ups, sit-ups, and then even one day my wife wasn't in, and I think halfway through it, he took a turd in the middle of the floor. He put me up front. First game of the season, we won 6-1, and I scored 5. and I came in after, and all the boys were like just shaking their head in disbelief. But my mindset at that time was, who have we got next? I'll take anyone on, because the training that they put me through, without them knowing it, made me as fit, as sharp as I possibly could have been at that stage. And then the next game I scored, the game after I scored, I think I had like nine goals in the first 4 games or something like that. And after that game, the chairman, he comes to me and says, "Look, I'm going to take you off the transfer list, but you have to take a pay cut." I'm like, "You do realize I just scored 5 goals today?" In the Portsmouth first team squad at the time, training every day with them. And Harry Redknapp was just walking off a training pitch, and he comes over to me and says, "Look, I'm going to have to get you out on loan." I was like, okay. So I had a reserve game the next day, and back then you would put your boots into a big metal bin, and then the kit man would bring it to the stadium for you. I think we might have been away to Aston Villa reserves or something like that. So my boots were packed, and he actually, I got a phone call from the agent saying, "Look, you're going alone to Bournemouth." I'm like, "I've got a game tonight." He says, "No, you need to go to Bournemouth. You've got a game tomorrow for the first team." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Get there today. You need to train today. They've got an afternoon session. Get there today." Because Bournemouth's an hour away from Portsmouth. He says, "Get there today, train, and then you're playing tomorrow against Oldham at home." So my boots were packed already, and I'm like, "Where are they?" Kit man had left. He was away up to Birmingham with my boots. So I actually went in, and there was luckily I had an old pair sitting there, old pair of Preds, like last year's ones, and I said, "Oh, I'm just going to have to take these." So I actually went down to Bournemouth, played the game. I remember coming off the pitch with like 2 dead legs, or what do you call them here? Charlie horses?
Charlie horse, dead leg, yeah.
Honestly, like I was 19 at the time, and just proper men. And I was playing as a striker, an old school League One, like Albert, but twice the size of Albert. And they were just getting into the back of me every time. The following year, Harry Redknapp left. We brought in Alain Perrin, the French manager. And it was actually to play the last 2 games of the season against West Brom and Wigan in the Premier League. So the first team stayed up. They were safe. They couldn't get relegated. And he called the reserve manager, brought me over and says, "What position do you play?" I'm like, "Attacking midfielder." He says, "Okay, tomorrow we'll play 4-4-1-1. You playing like as a number 10, basically." I'm like, "Oh, great." 30 minutes into the training session, one of the first team players follows through, catches me in the ankle, twists my ankle, out for 6 weeks. Calls over another boy, or striker. He plays the next 2 games. Elfsborg in Sweden end up signing him for 350 grand, 350,000 euro signing on fee after tax. Because a year later he went to Elfsborg and they drew Linfield in the Champions League qualifiers. So I actually met him in Belfast, and he actually showed me his bank account, and I'm like, "Are you joking me?" Obviously Johnny played with Miami and a couple of other teams, and I contacted him and says, "Look, how do I go about it?" He says, "First and foremost, you need a highlight reel. You need to make a highlight video, because that's what they do here. Back in Ireland, there's no highlight videos. You don't.
Yeah.
If you make a highlight video, you're seen as, oh, he loves himself. Yeah. He's a big time Charlie." Yeah. That's how people looked at it. Yeah. And luckily, the goals that I scored from the previous year and the year at Glentoran, and at Glentoran I scored some fantastic goals that year. They were all on the BBC website, and I was managed to pull them down and make a highlight video. And that's whenever I was like, I had a phone call with Asmir Begovic. I used to live with him in Portsmouth. and it says, "Look, Asmir, are you still, is Will still your agent?" Because he was a guy called Will, worked for IMG. He was both our agents, or he was our agent for both of us. I says, "Can Will? I'm looking to get a move across to America," and he grew up in Edmonton. And he says, "Look, I'll speak to Edmonton. They've got a team. Send me your video." And I sent it to Edmonton. The guy watched it, phoned me. Guy called Joe Petroni. He phones me, says, "Yes, you look awesome. They just hired Colin Miller." I said to Colin, "Look, fly back on Tuesday. We play Crusaders at home." So he flies to Glasgow, flies back to Belfast. But on the Monday night, we have training. And one of my best friends in the team at the time, I grew up with, he actually just retired the other day. A guy called David Armstrong. He was playing centre back. And he knew, I was speaking to him, and he was like, "It's just, as soon as I make a bad pass, he's going to drop me and put Albert in the team, and then I'm sitting on the bench for the rest of the year." Because Albert was the best centre back in the league the previous year. And I says, "Look, Davey, there's a scout over here, or there's a coach over watching Albert tomorrow night, but he needs to play. If he doesn't play, he's not going to see him. If he plays and plays well and he gets a move in January, you'll be playing centre back for the rest of the year. There's no one going to take it." So I actually says, "Look, your hamstring, make sure your hamstring's not right." 16, whenever I used to drop a little bit deeper to get the ball off Albert, get the ball off Pap, and me and Jake would have been on the same wavelength, I'd say, "Look, whenever I get turned here, make that run between the right back and the right centre back," because a lot of times Jake would have been on the left. And I would have found Jake with a 60-yard ball, or a couple of assists, and Jake would have found me in the opposite. I have videos of me setting him up, and then a week later he sets me up from a diagonal. So it was that sort of connection that I got, and the awareness of what Sen had done. And I remember early in the game, I waited to the centre back play the ball in the centre, and I went right in tight because I wanted to kick him early doors to let him know you're in for a game, being just the Irish type of me. And the defender passed the ball in a little bit too hard, and he spoke in Portuguese, I guess, or Spanish, whatever it was, to him. I think it might have been Spanish he actually spoke to him. And whatever he said to him, the next time the ball came in, the defender passed it in a little bit slower. But Senna was on the half turn, and he was looking at me. And he knew where the ball was. So I went in tight, and he just played a one-time ball around the corner. And then the next time, the defender passed it in hard to him. And I came tight, and he played a 1-2 back. And then the centre back broke a line, took a touch past me. So then after the game, I actually spoke to Mendes. I says, "Mendes, what did he say early on to the other centre back?" And he was explaining. He was saying, "Look, depending on my distance to him, pass it in softer so he can see me." But what Senna was doing was he was looking to see, the distance that I was going at, he was able to gauge the distance that I was at, and then look beyond me to where his players were, or where his players were going to be. And he would play a one-time ball. And it reminded me of watching Paul Scholes, like as a kid for Man United. I was flying over with Stephen Davis, Chris Brunt. Stephen Davis ended up going to Aston Villa. He was a few years older than me. Chris Brunt was a few years older. He ended up going to Middlesbrough. And then I ended up going over to Portsmouth and signing with Portsmouth. So that's where it started at the very beginning. And once I finished school at 16, and a month later, I was on a plane with one suitcase, moved to Portsmouth, and that was me straight in the pre-season. You grew up, even simple things like setting up a bank account. You just lived off your mom and dad. All of a sudden, you start getting paid. You got to go to the bank yourself. You got to go buy food yourself, and you don't have your mom to do your washing, to do your ironing. We were in digs at the time, so the guy and girl that we lived with, they would have done your washing and stuff, but sometimes they didn't get round to it. You had to just basically work it out yourself. But the first 6 months was very tough. Weekends after a game on a Saturday, you go back to your room. All the boys go home to their homes because they were all local. And there was me, Mark, and Asmir Begovic, the three foreign boys, and we would try and keep ourselves entertained. You're 16, you can't go out to bars or anything. again, but you grew up so fast. And again, in America, like there's still like it's still I still can't understand it whenever they say, "Oh, a 22-year-old, he's young, he's just breaking through." And like whenever I was 22-year-old, I'd already won the Irish League, I'd already won the cup. So like I was in men's football, playing, winning stuff, getting kicked all over the place. Again, going across the city, and it was controversial. I remember the day I went, signed it. The next day it was in the paper. I actually went up to Starbucks for a coffee, and a couple of Glentoran fans actually surrounded me, giving me a little bit of abuse. And that's the way Belfast was. But again, we went up there, and like the Linfield's squad depth was far superior than Glentoran's. We won the double that season, which was brilliant. You know, I remember we won the league, and the boys were like, "Get the beers out," but we had a cup final a week later, and the manager was like, "Have a beer, but that's it. You go home, you rest up, you win the cup final next week, and then you can have a beer." And that's what it was. It was so intense. Like there was no days off in terms of, you know, but my friends absolutely tortured me. Linfield actually won the league that year, beat us by 3 points, I think. And I remember that night, 2 o'clock in the morning, there must have been about 25 people outside my apartment just singing Linfield songs.
Oh.
And my wife had work the next day, and we're like, "Well, what do we do here?" But it was all good banter. Like the area that I come from, they all respect each other. And then again, the following year, we won the league. I won the league with Glentoran. And again, not everyone was congratulating me, and they actually called round to see my medal and stuff.